Have you ever given your time or your heart to someone only to feel used, drained, and invisible afterward? It's a feeling that can creep up on you, especially in our later years, when we believe our wisdom should protect us. But sometimes, that very wisdom, that very kindness we've cultivated over a lifetime, can be what others take advantage of. As we get older, our capacity to help others, our energy, our time, it all becomes more precious, doesn't it? We've earned the right to a peaceful chapter, to relationships that nurture us, not deplete us. It's not about becoming hard or cynical, it's about becoming discerning, about valuing ourselves as much as we value others. This video, my friends, is about recognizing the types of people who quietly, sometimes unknowingly, and sometimes quite deliberately, chip away at your well-being, your time, and your dignity. We're going to talk about how to spot these patterns and, more importantly, how to learn when and how to say no without carrying a mountain of guilt afterward. If you've ever left a phone call feeling more tired than when you answered, if a visit has left you anxious or frustrated, or if you simply feel like your give tank is constantly on empty, then this conversation is for you. This isn't just about managing difficult encounters, it's about preserving the essence of who you are. I want you to stick with me because what we're about to go through together could be the very key, the turning point, that makes the difference between a drained, resentful old age and one that's peaceful, respected, and strong. It's about learning to guard your spirit and your energy, so you can pour it into what truly matters, your joy, your passions, and the people who genuinely uplift you. This is your time to thrive, not just survive the demands of others. We're going to equip you with the understanding and the courage to make choices that honor your well-being. Let's begin. First, let's talk about a type many of us have encountered, the chronic borrower. This isn't usually about large, life-altering sums initially. It often starts small, a little favor here, a short-term loan there, always accompanied by a compelling story, an emergency that only you, with your kind heart, can solve. They know you're generous, they know you care, and they lean heavily on that goodwill. But a pattern soon emerges, doesn't it? The repayments become slow or non-existent, and the requests become more frequent, perhaps even more demanding. You find yourself caught in a cycle. You want to believe the best in them, especially if it's family or a long-time acquaintance. You might even start to feel a sense of responsibility for their well-being, a burden that was never yours to carry. Each time you give, there's a temporary reprieve, but the underlying issue, their reliance on your resources, never gets addressed. And with each yes, your own reserves, financial and emotional, dwindle just a little bit more, leaving you feeling stretched and often unappreciated. The chronic borrower is adept at making their problems feel like your emergencies. They might speak of dire consequences if you don't step in, playing on your empathy and your desire to be a good, helpful person. Over time, the borrowing can extend beyond money. It can be your car, your tools, your time, always with the promise of return or reciprocation that seldom materializes. It's a slow erosion of your boundaries and your resources, leaving you feeling like an unpaid ATM or a perpetual support system. Consider Bill's story. For years, his nephew, a charming young man, always seemed to be in a bind. "Just until my next paycheck, Uncle Bill," he'd say. Bill, a retired teacher with a modest pension, always helped. He'd dip into his savings, feeling the pinch but wanting to support family. It went on for years, little amounts here and there, adding up to a significant sum. Bill started to feel anxious every time his nephew called, knowing another request was likely coming. It wasn't just the money, it was the feeling of being taken for granted. One day, after a particularly draining request, Bill's wife gently pointed out the pattern. Bill felt a wave of guilt, then a dawning realization. He loved his nephew, but this wasn't helping him, it was enabling him. The next time the call came, Bill, with a lump in his throat, kindly but firmly said he couldn't help financially anymore. He explained he needed to protect his own financial security for his and his wife's future. It was incredibly difficult, one of the hardest things he'd done. The nephew was initially upset, even a bit cold. Bill felt a pang of that old guilt, wondering if he'd done the right thing. But something remarkable happened. Within a few months, the nephew, forced to rely on his own resources, started to manage his finances better. He got a second job, made a budget. He even called Bill one day, not to ask for money, but to share a small success he'd had at work. The dynamic shifted. Bill learned a powerful lesson that day. Protecting your boundaries, even your financial ones, doesn't make you cruel or unloving, it makes you wise. It teaches others responsibility, and it preserves your own peace and security, which are paramount, especially as we navigate our later years. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for someone, and for yourself, is to say no, allowing them the dignity of their own problem-solving. This isn't about hoarding your resources or becoming uncharitable. It's about discerning when your generosity is genuinely helping someone grow, and when it's simply enabling a cycle of dependency. It's about understanding that your financial well-being is a crucial part of your overall peace of mind. You've worked hard for what you have, and you have every right to protect it and decide thoughtfully how it's used without pressure or manipulation.
1, 2, 3.
Next, we encounter the emotional leecher. This is the person who seems to have a perpetual dark cloud hovering over them, and they are determined to share every drop of that rain with you. They call, they visit, they text, and the conversation is always about their problems, their dramas, their latest crisis. You listen patiently, you offer advice, you lend a sympathetic ear, because that's what good friends or caring family members do, right? But you soon notice something crucial is missing: reciprocity. They rarely, if ever, ask about you. Your triumphs, your struggles, your day-to-day life, these topics seldom make it onto their agenda. After every interaction, you feel utterly drained, as if your own life force has been siphoned off. It's like being a volunteer therapist, but without any of the professional boundaries or the option to end the session. They pour out their negativity, their anxieties, their complaints, and you absorb it all, leaving you feeling heavy, tired, and sometimes even a little resentful. These individuals often don't see the imbalance. They are so consumed by their own narratives of woe that they become oblivious to the emotional toll they're taking on others. They might even consider you their rock, their sounding board, without realizing that the rock is getting weathered down by their constant storm. The emotional leecher thrives on your attention and your empathy, but they offer little to nothing in return to replenish your spirit. Think about Linda. Her friend Sarah was a classic emotional leecher. Every phone call, sometimes multiple times a day, was a litany of complaints about her job, her family, her health, you name it. Linda, a naturally empathetic person, would spend hours listening, offering comfort and suggestions, but she noticed that Sarah never once asked, "And how are you, Linda?" After these calls, Linda would feel exhausted, her own mood significantly dampened. She started to dread Sarah's calls. One afternoon, after a particularly draining 2-hour monologue from Sarah, Linda felt a profound sense of depletion. She realized she was sacrificing her own peace, her own emotional energy, for someone who wasn't giving anything back. It felt selfish to even think it, but the truth was undeniable. She decided, for her own sanity, she had to make a change. She started by not answering every call immediately. She'd let it go to voicemail, listen, and then decide if and when she had the emotional capacity to respond. When she did speak to Sarah, she started gently redirecting the conversation. After a reasonable amount of listening, she'd say, "Sarah, I hear you, and that sounds tough. On my end, it wasn't easy." Sarah sometimes seemed surprised, or would try to steer the conversation back to herself, but Linda persisted, kindly but firmly. She also started suggesting that Sarah might benefit from speaking with a professional counselor, framing it as a way to get dedicated support. Slowly, things began to shift. The calls became less frequent, and sometimes, Sarah would even remember to ask Linda how she was doing. Linda felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. She learned that she didn't owe anyone her unlimited emotional bandwidth. Her peace, her energy, her emotional well-being, these were precious resources she had a right to protect. It wasn't about abandoning a friend in need, but about establishing healthy limits for her own survival. Remember this, my friends, you do not owe anyone your emotional bandwidth to the point of your own exhaustion. Your empathy is a gift, not an endless well for others to drain. It's okay to limit your exposure to constant negativity. It's okay to protect your heart and your mind. True connection is a two-way street, where support and care flow in both directions. Prioritizing your emotional peace isn't selfish, it's essential self-preservation. Now let's shine a light on the guilt tripper. Oh, this one can be subtle, can't they? They are masters of emotional manipulation, using your conscience, your kindness, and your desire to be seen as a good person against you. They don't often make direct demands. Instead, they use carefully crafted phrases, sighs, and sorrowful looks to make you feel obligated, responsible, or just plain bad if you don't do what they want. Their words can be like little arrows, each one tipped with a dose of "you should." You'll hear things like, "Oh, don't worry about me, I'll just sit here alone, I'm used to it." or I just didn't think you'd forget about us after all we've been through, or perhaps, it's fine, I know you're busy with more important things. These statements are designed to trigger that familiar pang of guilt, making you second-guess your decisions and rush to appease them, often at your own expense. It's a powerful tactic because it plays on our deepest fears of being perceived as uncaring or selfish. The guilt tripper rarely acknowledges your efforts or sacrifices. Instead, they focus on what you haven't done, or what they perceive as a slight. This can be incredibly draining because you find yourself constantly trying to prove your affection or loyalty, walking on eggshells to avoid triggering another guilt-inducing comment. It's a no-win situation because the goalposts often shift, and their unspoken expectations can be impossible to meet. Let me tell you about George. He had a longtime friend, Mark, who was an expert guilt tripper. If George couldn't make it to a last-minute get-together, Mark would say something like, "Well, I guess some friendships just aren't a priority anymore." If George was busy and couldn't help Mark with a chore immediately, it would be, "I remember when friends used to help each other out, no questions asked." George found himself constantly rearranging his schedule, feeling stressed and resentful, just to avoid Mark's disappointed sighs and loaded comments. This went on for years. George felt perpetually indebted, though he couldn't quite pinpoint why. He valued the history of their friendship, but the interactions were becoming increasingly one-sided and emotionally taxing. He'd leave encounters with Mark feeling like a bad friend, even when he knew he was doing his best to balance his own life and commitments. The weight of unspoken obligations was heavy. One day, George was reading an article about emotional manipulation, and it was like a light bulb went on. He recognized Mark's tactics immediately. It was a painful realization but also empowering. He decided he couldn't live under that cloud of guilt any longer. The next time Mark tried a guilt trip, George responded differently. When Mark said, "I guess I'll just have to manage this big yard sale all by myself then," instead of rushing to volunteer, George calmly said, "Mark, I understand that's a big task. Unfortunately, I have prior commitments this weekend, but I'm wishing you all the best with it." Mark was taken aback. There was a moment of silence, then a huff, but George stood firm. He didn't apologize excessively or make excuses. He simply stated his boundary. It was uncomfortable at first, and the friendship did go through a strained period, but George realized something profound. Real generosity, true acts of service, come from a place of joy and genuine willingness, not from pressure or emotional blackmail. He started to feel lighter, more in control of his own time and emotions. When you recognize the tactics of a guilt tripper, you can begin to reclaim your power. It's not about being unkind, it's about refusing to be manipulated. You are not responsible for managing other adults' emotions or fulfilling their every unspoken desire. True relationships are built on respect and understanding, not on a foundation of guilt and obligation. Remember, your peace of mind is worth protecting, and you have the right to say no without feeling like you've committed a crime. Let's turn our attention to the manipulative complimenter. Now, who doesn't love a genuine compliment? It can brighten your day, make you feel seen and appreciated. But the manipulative complimenter uses flattery as a tool, a carefully aimed strategy to soften you up, to make you feel special right before they make a request or ask for a favor. Their praise can feel intoxicating, making you feel uniquely capable, wonderfully generous, or incredibly insightful. The pattern is often quite predictable, though it can take a while to spot. You'll notice that the most effusive compliments, the ones that really make you glow, are almost always followed by, "And since you're so good at X, could you possibly," or "Knowing how kind you are, I was hoping you might." The flattery is the bait, designed to lower your defenses and make it much harder for you to refuse their subsequent appeal. It's a subtle form of transaction. These individuals are often very charming and seem genuinely admiring. That's what makes this tactic so effective. You want to believe their kind words are sincere, and perhaps a part of them is, but the consistent link between excessive praise and an ensuing request is the telltale sign. They make you feel good about yourself, and then, while you're basking in that warmth, they slide in their agenda. It's a way of creating a sense of obligation through positive reinforcement. If you say yes, the warmth and admiration continue. But if you dare to decline, you might notice a sudden coolness, a withdrawal of that affection, or even a subtle hint of disappointment that makes you question if you've somehow let them down after they thought so highly of you. This conditions you to comply because, well, who wants to lose that feeling of being special and appreciated? It's a clever, albeit disingenuous way to manage your responses. Imagine you have a neighbor who rarely speaks to you, but suddenly one day they stop you to say, "Your garden is the most beautiful on the entire street. You have such a gift with plants, it's truly inspiring." You feel a swell of pride. Then a moment later they add, "And since you're such an expert, I was wondering if you could take a look at my struggling rose bushes this weekend, and maybe give me a few pointers, or even help me prune them?" The compliment was the setup. It's important to differentiate this from genuine appreciation. We all compliment people we care about. The key here is the consistency of the pattern. Compliment, then request. If praise almost always precedes an ask, especially from certain individuals, it's time to become a little more discerning. Think about whether the compliments stand alone, offered freely without an agenda, or if they serve as a preamble to them needing something from you. The best defense against the manipulative complimenter is awareness. When you receive a particularly glowing compliment, especially from someone who has a history of this behavior, take a moment. Enjoy the kind words, thank them sincerely, but internally, put up a little antenna. Be prepared for the ask that might follow. This doesn't mean you become cynical about all praise, but it does mean you become wiser to the tactics. Remember, your skills, your time, and your generosity are valuable. You have the right to share them on your own terms, not because you've been buttered up with flattery. If compliments always, and I mean always, come before a favor from a particular person, be cautious. True appreciation doesn't need to be a down payment on your compliance. Learn to accept praise graciously, but separate it from any obligation to agree to every request that follows. Ah, the drama magnet. We all know someone like this, don't we? Their life seems to be a never-ending soap opera, a series of escalating crises, emergencies, and emotional upheavals. And somehow you always get cast in a supporting role, expected to drop everything, rush to their side, offer solutions, or simply absorb the fallout from their latest chaotic episode. They thrive on the intensity, the attention, and the flurry of activity that surrounds their dramas. These individuals often have a remarkable talent for drawing others into their vortex. One crisis barely subsides before another one erupts. It could be relationship turmoil, financial woes, conflicts with others, or health scares that always seem to be at a fever pitch. They are not necessarily bad people, but they are often addicted to the adrenaline of chaos or lack the skills to manage their lives in a more stable way, and they rely on you to be their emergency responder. The problem is, their constant state of emergency can become your constant state of stress. You find yourself on high alert, waiting for the next inevitable call or text detailing the latest disaster. Your own plans get derailed, your own peace is shattered, as you're pulled into their whirlwind. You might feel a sense of duty, or perhaps you're a natural problem solver, but being perpetually entangled in someone else's drama is exhausting and unsustainable. You might offer advice, help them find resources, or provide a listening ear, but you'll notice that the drama rarely ceases. Sometimes it feels like they almost don't the crisis to end, because the drama itself provides a form of excitement or a way to feel important and attended to. Your well-intentioned efforts to help them find calm often go unheeded, or new problems conveniently arise just as old ones seem to be resolving. Think about it. How much of your energy, your time, your emotional resources are you expending on someone else's recurring self-generated storms? While it's noble to want to help, there's a point where you must ask yourself if you're truly helping or if you're just enabling a cycle of chaos. Sometimes people need to experience the natural consequences of their choices, or learn to navigate their own storms without a constant rescuer. It is absolutely okay to step back from their drama to protect your own peace. This doesn't mean you stop caring, but it does mean you stop being their primary crisis manager. You can offer sympathy from a distance, perhaps suggest professional help if appropriate, but you are not obligated to immerse yourself in every detail of their ongoing sagas. Your life deserves its own calm, its own focus, free from imported chaos. Setting boundaries with a drama magnet can be challenging. They might accuse you of not caring, or try to pull you back in with an even more urgent emergency. But your well-being must be your priority. You can say, "I care about you, but I cannot be in the middle of this situation right now," or "I hope things resolve for you, but I need to focus on my own commitments." It takes courage, but the relief you'll feel is immeasurable. Remember, your peace is a precious commodity, especially as you get older. You've earned the right to a tranquil environment, both internal and external. Don't let someone else's addiction to drama become your life's recurring theme. It's okay to choose calm. It's okay to protect your energy. You can love someone or care about them without riding every single roller coaster of their creation. Let's talk about the one-sided friend. This is the person who seems to remember you exist only when they need something, a favor, advice, a loan, an audience for their problems, or even just a ride somewhere. The communication is almost entirely initiated by them, and it's almost always centered around their needs. Once their need is met, they often disappear again until the next time they require your assistance. You might find yourself wondering, when was the last time they called just to see how I'm doing? Or, when did they ever offer to help when I was going through a tough time? In a one-sided friendship, you are the giver, and they are the taker. There's little to no reciprocity, no mutual exchange of support, care, or even simple interest in your life. It can leave you feeling more like a convenience than a cherished friend. These relationships can be particularly painful because you may have genuine affection for the person, or a long history together. You keep hoping that one day they'll show up for you in the way you consistently show up for them. But the pattern persists, and with each interaction, you might feel a growing sense of imbalance and perhaps even a quiet resentment. You're investing your precious time and energy into a connection that isn't nourishing you in return. It's important to understand that true friendship, true connection, is a dance of give and take. It's about mutual support, shared joys, and being there for each other through thick and thin. If you find you're always the one listening, always the one helping, always the one reaching out with no reciprocation, it's time to reevaluate that connection. Is this a friendship, or is it an arrangement where you are providing a service? Consider the energy you pour into these one-sided dynamics. What if that energy was redirected towards people who actively engage with you, who show genuine interest in your well-being, who offer support without you having to ask, or who simply enjoy your company for who you are, not for what you can do for them? This isn't about keeping score, but about recognizing when a relationship is fundamentally unbalanced and draining. It can be hard to let go or even just to pull back from someone you've considered a friend. You might fear hurting their feelings or being seen as unkind. But ask yourself, who is looking out for feelings? Who is ensuring needs for connection and support are met? As we get older, our social circles may naturally become smaller, but the quality of those connections becomes even more vital. My suggestion here is to start valuing and investing more deeply in mutual relationships. Pay attention to who checks in on you, who celebrates your successes, who offers a shoulder when you're down. These are the connections that will sustain and uplift you. For the one-sided friends, you don't necessarily need a dramatic confrontation. You can simply start by being less available, by not always being the first to respond, or by gently declining requests if you're feeling depleted. You deserve relationships where you feel seen, heard, and valued for who you are, not just for what you can provide. Let go of the guilt of expecting reciprocity. It's not selfish, it's a fundamental aspect of healthy human connection. Focus on nurturing the bonds that feed your soul, and gracefully create distance from those that only seem to take. Your time and energy are too precious to be spent in perpetual giving without receiving. Finally, let's address the boundary breaker. These are the individuals who consistently disregard your limits, whether those limits are explicitly stated or commonly understood social cues. They might show up at your door unannounced, expecting you to drop everything. They might call at inconvenient hours, monopolize your time without consideration for your schedule, or push for personal information you're not comfortable sharing. They operate as if your time, your space, and your priorities are entirely flexible and at their disposal. Boundary breakers often don't take no for an answer easily. They might wheedle, cajole, or even feign ignorance of your previously stated limits. "Oh, I know you said you were busy, but this will only take a minute," they might say. And that minute turns into an hour. Or they might barge into your home while you're in the middle of something, assuming your activities are less important than their desire for company or assistance. This constant encroachment can leave you feeling flustered, disrespected, and like you have no control over your own life. For many of us, especially those who were raised to be accommodating and polite, setting and enforcing boundaries can feel uncomfortable, even confrontational. We don't want to seem rude or unwelcoming. But here's the truth. Your boundaries are essential for your well-being, your productivity, and your peace of mind. They are the invisible fences that protect your personal space, your energy, and your time, all of which become increasingly valuable as we age. Think of your personal boundaries as the rules of engagement for how others interact with you. If these rules are consistently ignored, it's like someone repeatedly walking through your garden and trampling your flowers. You wouldn't allow that, would you? Your emotional and temporal space deserves the same protection. It's not about building walls to keep everyone out, it's about installing a gate and deciding who you let in, when, and for how long. If you're dealing with a boundary breaker, the first step is clarity. Be clear with yourself about what your limits are. When is it okay for people to call? When do you need uninterrupted time? What topics are off limits? Once you're clear, you need to communicate these boundaries calmly but firmly. For example, I appreciate you wanting to visit, but I need you to call ahead to make sure it's a good time, as I often have other commitments. Or, I'm available for calls between X and Y hours, but outside of that, I'm focusing on other things. The key is consistency. When a boundary is tested, and it likely will be, you must enforce it. If someone shows up unannounced after you've asked them to call first, you might say, "It's so nice to see you, but as I mentioned, I really need a heads up before visits. I'm right in the middle of something now, so I can't chat. But let's schedule a time soon." This might feel awkward, but it reinforces that your boundary is real. Remember, people who respect you will respect your boundaries. Those who repeatedly ignore them are demonstrating a lack of regard for your needs and feelings. It's not your job to make everyone comfortable at the expense of your own peace. Learning to say no or not now is a skill, and like any skill, it gets easier with practice. Each time you successfully enforce a boundary, you reclaim a little more of your personal power and your peace. Setting and enforcing boundaries is not selfish. It's an act of self-respect and self-preservation. It teaches others how to treat you and ensures that you have the time and energy for the things and people that truly matter to you. Your home should be your sanctuary, your time, your own, to manage. Don't let boundary breakers erode the quality of your life. You have every right to define your space and guard it with loving firmness. We've journeyed through these 7 types of people together, and I hope this exploration has brought some clarity, perhaps some aha moments for you. Recognizing these patterns is the first powerful step toward reclaiming your energy and ensuring your interactions enrich your life rather than deplete it. It's about making conscious choices about who gets your precious time and your equally precious emotional resources. If you're still watching and finding these insights valuable, please comment the number of the type you've encountered most below. Sharing our experiences helps us all feel less alone and more empowered. This journey of self-preservation and boundary setting is ongoing, and it's one I am passionate about us exploring together. There's so much more wisdom to uncover, so many more strategies to share that can help us live our later years with vitality and joy. If you haven't subscribed yet to Thinlytics, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell notification so you don't miss any videos. We're building a community here, a space for growth, understanding, and mutual support as we navigate this chapter of life. Remember, protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's survival. It's about honoring the life you've built and the wisdom you've gained. You deserve relationships that honor your time, energy, and dignity. You have the right to cultivate an environment around you that is supportive, respectful, and uplifting. Go forward with the courage to set the boundaries you need and to invest in the connections that truly make your spirit soar. Thank you for spending this time with me.